thoughts are, and I will see you next time. Bye!
Or how about I make a video instead? You know how it goes. So, just over a week ago, Olivia Pope made a video called Charity Bookshopping, a discussion. And I highly suggest that you go watch this video, and especially read the comments below to see lots of different perspectives. She then later went on to make a really lovely BookTuber Shoutout video, and within that she mentioned a channel called Velma Vlogs. Now, she mentioned this because Velma had a really interesting discussion video also about charity bookshops. However, this was more for the fact that Velma doesn't keep her books. And these three videos together gave me a lot of food for thought, so I decided to make this video. In this video essay, I'm going to take the similar thread that ran through these three videos and create a new discussion based from them. This discussion is going to be looking at morality and charity, and of course I'm going to be basing this through books. So due to the length of the plan that I had for this video, I've ultimately had to break it down into two parts. So the first part is going to be looking at in regards to morality and in regards to charity. And then the second part, you'll have to wait until next week to see where the conversation goes further. So the reason I want to begin this part by looking at morality is because I feel that morality is something that's going to drive not only this conversation, but all the choices that people tend to make when it comes to the situations and processes that I'm later going to be talking about in this video essay. So let's take a look quickly at what morality actually means. The definition says that morality is the principles concerning the distinction between right and wrong, or good and bad behaviour. And then it makes me consider, where do we tend to learn our morals? Where do we tend to learn what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad? For some people, perhaps, it's something that they learn through their religious practices. And you can often find guides to these in holy books like the Bible and the Quran, and even here, the Dhammapada. And for some other people, perhaps they feel it's not religion, and that in fact some organised religion promotes kind of contentious points of morality. It creates a morally grey area, and then you get such books like The Northern Lights and his Dark Materials trilogy by Pullman, in which he critiques organised religion, and he critiques the rules put in place upon people in order to live a good life or a bad life, in order to have a good afterlife or a bad afterlife. For me, it's a very interesting topic, but both this religious avenue and this critical avenue both have been written down and both have been committed to books. And it does make me wonder then, do we learn our morals from books? Of course, there are other forces at play here. You know, it's your social upbringing, your family around you, the actions that you see other people doing whilst you're growing up. However, for a lot of us, especially here on BookTube, I feel that we do learn a lot about the world and the different perceptions of right and wrong through books. So it's a good way to broaden our own ideas of morality and then broaden our understanding of other people's perceptions on morality. And morality leads very easily and smoothly into charity. Usually charity work, without question, is deemed good, it's deemed beneficial, it's kind to others, and it helps others. Even here, looking through the local newspaper, there's so much support about supporting your local community, all these people who are charitable, doing charitable events. And so this leads me into the discussion in regards to Olivia's video. about charity shopping, and particularly charity book shopping. Now, I myself tend not to use charity bookshops, or at least buying books from charity shops. I have been very fortunate enough to be able to afford books when I want to buy them. I don't buy them too often. I am quite selective of the books I do buy, and when I buy them, oftentimes they are deemed a treat or a little luxury for certain things or events. However, when I do buy books, because I have been quite fortunate, I tend to choose to support local independent bookshops. The reason I never really chose a charity shop is because I was always worried about there not being much choice, there not being good quality books. When I tend to buy books, usually I have a book in mind that I want to buy, and I will go and buy that. And when I don't have a book in mind, I like to have a wide selection so I can choose from myriad of options. But the way Olivia problematizes book buying from charity shops really got me thinking, and I became curious as to how I truly felt about it. However, at the end of the day, where I am at the moment, morality is a feeling. It's something very individual to each person, and therefore, it's so subjective that there's no right or wrong answer, just as there could be no right or wrong way of living. So in order for us to kind of better understand our own feelings or our own perceptions of the way we do things because of our morality, it requires something that I'm now going to experiment with. Something that I do a lot in my studies, and something I'm excited to do today. And that is autoethnography. Hi guys, so I'm just about to do a bit of an experiment. I have got here £6, and I am going to go down into town to the charity shops. I think there's about 4 or 5 charity shops in my town. I know there's not many, or there's not... I think actually there's quite a lot. I can't remember. But anyway, I'm going to go down, and I'm going to see if I can spend those £6 and on books, of course, and to see just how it feels, and kind of see what the selection is like, I guess. And yeah, because £6 can't really buy me a paperback in Waterstones, so we'll just see what it can get me in a charity shop. And I'm not going to buy just any books. I'm only going to buy them if I really want to read them. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting little experiment. But let's go down into town and see what happens. Okay, so I ended up going to 4 charity shops. The first one was Sue Ryder, which you can see here. They had a very small selection, but they had 1 or 2 that was interesting. They had perfume, but I have my own copy, I just don't know where it is. And then I also saw that they had this one, The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. I've seen this book a lot in Waterstones and kind of been tempted, but not enough to pick it up. And then I saw this one by Ben Okri, The Age of Magic. So then I went into cancer research, and I saw the stuff from Knife, a really nice cover, but I do have my own. And then I saw the Rosie Project, which, well, you know. So then I moved on to Marie Curie. And this one had a bigger selection than the other 2, but it wasn't a great selection. They also had the best prices, I found. I liked that they had the David Mitchell books. However, of course, I own pretty much all the David Mitchell books. And there wasn't anything there. There was a very particular age group that they kind of catered for, I guess.
Now, the British Heart Foundation, on the other hand, had the biggest selection of books and probably the best selection of books too. I found Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel, which, of course, was one I'm interested in. I've also been interested in The Empress Orchid for quite a while, but never been interested enough to pick it up. And they had some Jeanette Winterson books here. However, I was more taken by The Angel's Game by Carlos Ruiz Zafón.
So in this part of the video essay, I'm going to talk mostly in regards to Olivia Pope's video about buying books from charity shops. And you can also see that I started this process by doing autoethnography, which is something that, I do as part of my studies. And I guess on here it kind of just looks a bit like a fun experiment. But the reason that we do autoethnography is because sometimes when you're studying something that people do, you can get a very different perspective when you actually do it yourself. And by doing it yourself, you learn something new. You learn about the process that it takes in order to do that thing, and you kind of get a feel for it yourself, which can help you understand the way that other people do the same process. So that's why I decided that I wanted to go to the charity shop. And it's quite funny because when I started making this video, I was very much kind of going to express Olivia's discussion on buying books from charity shops in a very similar vein to how she did it. Except I was just going to expound on her points a little bit further and then kind of use some social theory to sort of understand them a little bit better. However, I feel that by doing this autoethnographic method myself and actually going down into town to the charity shops, since it's not something I've really done before, I found that my ideas have actually changed. So I went into town with £6 and I ended up buying 3 books, and altogether they cost £5. Now the first book that I bought was this one, The Age of Magic by Ben Okri. I bought this from the Sue Ryder shop, which was the first shop at the top of town. It's literally just as you get onto the high street. When I was in this shop, it didn't really, it very much felt like a charity shop, and it was through and through a charity shop, but it didn't really feel much like I was in the mindset that I usually am, or I thought I was going to be when I went into a charity shop, because I very quickly found that I was going into the same mindset I am in any other bookshop, in that I was just distracted by the titles and the names, and even the covers of books that I hadn't heard anything about was beginning to draw my attention. And this was why I bought this one. It was very much a cover buy. So then, I went into this experiment saying I wasn't going to buy a book unless it was one I really wanted to read. And then kind of considering, do I really want to read this book? I mean, I do. However, before I went into the shop, this would be the sort of book I wouldn't have chosen to pick up. So then I kind of, wondered, well then, do I have a different mindset going into the charity shop or not? This one also didn't have a price on it, but I managed to get it for £1 because some of the other books were also £1, despite the majority of the others being between £1.50 to £2. So then I kind of felt, maybe there isn't a difference between charity shopping and going into Waterstones, at least the way it feels. So I left the shop feeling, maybe I should be a little bit more strict in the next ones to kind of limit myself so I don't fall into this trap. And then I began to go down into the high street and down into town, and I realised very quickly that actually something that did appeal to me were the charities behind the shops. So I wanted to go into the Cats Protection because, of course, I love cats and it's something that I would be happy to spend my money in. However, it was closed. And feeling a bit disappointed that it was closed made me wonder, so maybe actually a part of it is supporting the charity. In the case of Sue Ryder, it's not a particular charity that I'm affiliated with or have ever been affiliated with or kind of ever been drawn to support. So then buying this book kind of made me feel, yes, okay, it wasn't exactly the shop itself, it was very much the book and the feeling of being in front of a bookshelf with pretty covers and choosing one based on the cover. So then I went into the Cancer Research, which is a charity which is quite close to my heart. One of my best friends from secondary school actually passed away from cancer, and she, after her death, she wanted money to be given to like cancer support groups and cancer research, subsequently. And I kind of came away from that. I didn't buy anything, but I came away from that shop feeling a little bit like, I wish they did have a better selection, because it's one that I would feel better giving my money to. And then kind of reflecting on why perhaps people don't give so much to cancer research when I feel it's something that, affects a lot of people's lives. And then I went into Marie Curie. I had no sense of, affiliation with Marie Curie. It wasn't one I particularly, was driven to give my money to. Their selection was a bit poor. I know that my mum and stepdad sometimes give stuff to the British Heart Foundation. I think they usually split their stuff between the Cancer Research and the British Heart Foundation. Again, I don't have any real affiliation to the British Heart Foundation. It's not something I've given to before. However, their selection was the greatest. So it kind of suggests that within this town, at least, perhaps more people are willing to give to the British Heart Foundation. So the first book I got was Daphne du Maurier's My Cousin Rachel. Now this book cost £2. In fact, all of the books, the majority of the books cost £2 or more in the British Heart Foundation. So obviously they were asking for more money than a lot of the other shops were. I've always wanted to read du Maurier. However, her books are not one that I would pick up in a full price bookshop, because there's always other books that I would fancy reading more. So then I found that when my choice was limited, I was actually more likely to pick up the books that I would otherwise overlook. And I'm really excited to read this, don't get me wrong. And I do really want to get into du Maurier. And I particularly chose this book because I want to watch the movie that came out recently. So then I was a bit like, okay, well that's a good thing about shopping at charity shops, is that by having a limited choice, I am then more likely to pick up the books that previously are ones that I've wanted to pick up but never actually feel driven in a full price bookshop. For example, Waterstones, and the Waterstones in Exeter has a much more extensive range of books, and they usually have the ones that will be harder to find in my independent bookshop. So then I ended up buying The Angel's Game by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. It's quite a funny story actually, because this book in particular, I am 90% sure this book is one that my mum gave to that charity shop. So I am almost certain that this copy was my mum's. So therefore, it doesn't really feel like I'm spending it, because I feel like it's already belonged to the family, so I'm just kind of getting it back and giving to charity without, that middle process of it being given to the charity shop and my taking it seems to kind of be defunct because it stayed in the same house ultimately. So that's a strange way of seeing it. However, that kind of therefore makes me feel less like I'm stealing. Well, it's not stealing, but it makes me feel less like, I'm not keeping money from Zafón because our family have already given him the money. We have already paid for the book. Because that's one of the biggest points that Olivia argued within her video, is that, technically we should be supporting writers. When the book's bought from a charity shop, that money doesn't get given to the writers. And, there is the little message at the front of the book that says this should not be resold. So then on my walk home, I was trying to reflect on this and trying to think about, okay, well, that final book I bought, it didn't feel like I was stealing from the author. With du Maurier, again, it didn't feel like I was kind of really stealing from her because she's dead. So then, the only one perhaps that I might be taking support of the author from is the Ben Okri book. However, then I did think about it more, and because I don't actually ever feel like I'm not supporting the author. Particularly not having a BookTube channel, because I am subsequently talking about these books, and if I enjoy them and I review them, it might help other people buy the books, which kind of then goes back to supporting the author. And then I want to go back to this point of in the front of the book where it says this shall not be, or it should not be resold. Technically it's not being resold, because for me, the way that I see it is that for it to be resold, the person who is reselling it has to be making a profit. And because it's a charity shop, they are not making a profit. The money from the book goes into the support for the charity and for the running of the shop in order to continue the support for the charity. And it's not like another individual is profiting or gaining from this reselling. That is when, you know, it will be wrong. And I think that's when it will also be illegal. So then I kind of felt that what I wanted to argue in this video actually kind of completely changed. Because, you know, and it's not until you start actually doing these things that you kind of do realise how you do actually feel. It's all well and good having an opinion, but until you do it. And I do believe Olivia has said that she does buy from charity shops. And also Olivia's perspective is coming from the fact that she is a writer, so she, you know, she wants to be supported. However, you know, I also would hope to become a writer and to be able to make a living from writing. But I do feel that, you know, perhaps buying from charity shops isn't a problem. If I was a writer and people were buying my charity shops, I wouldn't have a problem with that because, you know, they're supporting a charity. And also the shape of charity shops, or the body of charity, doesn't just extend to the charity that the shop supports. I think the other side of this charity is, and I don't want to say it as a charitable thing, but the fact that you're actually giving books for a much more reduced price, making them so much more accessible, means that people from low-income families who don't have the money at a certain time in their lives can still afford to buy books and can still afford that little luxury. And are books a luxury? You know, they can be argued that books are knowledge, and knowledge shouldn't be a luxury. Knowledge should be open to all. So I just feel that that's the further extent of the charity, is that not only are, you know, you giving to that charity body, but they, by selling books for cheaper, are giving to more people, because not everyone can afford to buy from Waterstones, not everyone can afford to buy online. And so having that charity shop as an option for cheaper books actually, you know, makes it kind of feel a little bit better, you know. And somebody did previously buy the book for full price. And what's the difference then between passing it on to a friend or a family member than giving it to somebody, you know, just for a little price, who otherwise might not be able to afford literature? So yeah, it was a really interesting experiment actually to do this and to find how my mindset had changed. And yeah, in the future, I might be more inclined to nip into a charity shop every now and then. But this experiment has been really interesting and eye-opening, and I feel I did pretty well from it.